sad that it had to reach this point, but I find strength in numbers too.
Tonight, calls to search landfills ring out across the country.
We need action. Searching the landfills is what reconciliation looks like.
Plus, dozens of people gather in Halifax supporting the landfill searches.
Right at the very beginning, we needed to build or rebuild the credibility of the Métis Nation.
And a feature interview with the outgoing president of the Métis Nation of Alberta. Good evening, Tansayanin. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Today is the International Day of Action to search the landfills, and rallies are being held across the country. The day honors MMIWG2S people whose remains are believed to be in 2 Manitoba landfills, as well as those across the country. We start in Ottawa, where Fraser Needham caught up with the families of Manitoba women.
Melissa Robinson is a cousin of Morgan Harris. She says the families had been expecting the minister to announce the federal government will fund a search of the Prairie Green landfill, but that was not the answer they got.
We last sat with him 5 weeks ago, and he expressed that the work needs to be done. We're gonna start doing it, but in 5 weeks nothing has panned out yet. So here we are, yet again, sitting down, reliving our trauma, just to be told that they have more questions.
Jordan Myron is the sister of Mercedes Myron. She says continuously having to ask the government for help is re-traumatizing.
I shouldn't have to stand up here today in front of you all fighting and grieving at the exact same time. My sister was human. My sister deserves a proper burial.
Assembly of Manitoba Chief's Grand Chief Kathy Merrick says First Nations people want action on a search, not more government red tape.
With the new minister here, we came here to be optimistic that things will change. But there's so much bureaucracy in our systems when it comes to our people.
Robinson says although the families are frustrated on the lack of government movement on a search, their will is now stronger than ever to see that one gets done.
It's frustrating, but you know what? It's just keeping that fire lit in me. It's tiring, it's exhausting, it's emotional. It's been such a roller coaster, but we believe it's going to get done. We understand it takes time, but you know what? We're not going anywhere, and if anything, we're just getting stronger from this.
APTN News reached out to Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anasandagri for comment, but did not hear back by airtime. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Cambria Harris, the daughter of Morgan Harris, was also on Parliament Hill today. She's been calling for a search of the Prairie Green landfill, where it is believed her mother's remains are after being dumped last year. Here's what she had to say.
I'm sad that it had to reach this point, but I find strength in numbers too, and I find it beautiful that the community gathers for these kinds of things to continue to show that we're still here, we're always here, and for Search the Landfill to blow up into something so massive just shows that we really do value our Indigenous women, we value our lives, and our lives are at stake. And so this is about sending a very clear message that, we're not trash, we're not garbage, we're not disposable, and we never will be. And it's time for us to finally stand up and fight that system and those changes and the cracks within the system that continue to fail us repeatedly. So the meeting with the minister was originally supposed to be Thursday, and then they found out that we were heading off to Ottawa. So then they rescheduled it for today. So it was at 8:45 a.m. And we went into that meeting with a lot of hope because we were under the impression that we were going to discuss terms of next steps to search the landfill and how we could get it started, if there's anything that we could do, because it might not be searching right now, but we could absolutely prepare. And so that's the impression that we went in there with today. And then he told us that he still had more questions about the feasibility study. It's about, I would say it would be inspiring others to realize that they themselves have a voice, and that they don't always need to take no for an answer. And it might feel like the world's crushing against you. It might feel like the world's against you because what you think is right is what they think is wrong. But don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Because in my heart, I know that my mother needs to be found and that she needs to be retrieved from those landfills. And all these families know that they deserve some type of closure. And it's not just my family, it's thousands of families across Canada that are affected by this on a daily basis. And when these decisions are made to not search the landfill, it sets a precedent that we are not being valued by any level of government, and that it is okay to continuously dispose of us in the future, and that nobody's going to look for us. And I think that's a very, very sad statement to make, but that's what's happening here.
And in Winnipeg, hundreds of people showed up at the Manitoba Legislature. People gathered in front of the Manitoba Ledge over the noon hour on this National Day of Action. They brought their demands to Manitoba's Premier, who has turned down requests to search, citing risks and the likelihood of finding remains. APTN's Leanne Sanders was there and brings us this report.
Family members of missing and murdered women, girls, and Two-Spirit people were joined by support groups, unions, and First Nation leadership. Gina Smoke works in Indigenous Relations for Unifor, one of a handful of unions standing up to demand a search of the landfill.
I just think that the movement is growing bigger, and I really think it's really sad that we have to have an international day of action for something like this, because I don't believe if it was another person that this would be we wouldn't have to be going through this. We shouldn't need to be fighting for how long now to search for our family members.
The recently elected chief of Saugeen spoke of the impact in his nation.
I really found it important to be here today because our community in Saugeen is suffering some of the highest rates of missing and murdered women across Canada. And it's important for us to be here in solidarity with the other communities and the other people that are seeking justice for our women.
Calling herself an impacted family member, the chair of the National Family and Survivors Circle told the crowd, "We can't forget the women who have been taken."
It's really important as a community that we rise together and we carry the families during this difficult journey that they're on. Each and every one of us has a sacred responsibility, to call out our governments, to demand action. Let's say their names. Each and every one of them are sacred.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Dozens of people also gathered in Halifax to commemorate the day. Posters lined the gates of Province House as people rallied in front of the Nova Scotia government building, demanding an immediate search of landfills across the country for the remains of MMIWG2S people. Charity and Cameron West are from Prince George, British Columbia. They are walking across Canada to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous people and joined the rally in Halifax.
We need action. Searching the landfills is what reconciliation looks like. We can't be talking reconciliation and not doing any follow-through.
More than 200 people turned out for a memorial walk in Saskatoon honoring the memory of Megan Gallagher over the weekend. One of the people accused in her death faces a preliminary hearing in a Saskatoon courtroom today. Robert Bobby James Thomas is charged with first-degree murder in the death of the 30-year-old Gallagher. As per court protocol, a publications ban is in place for this stage of the trial. 8 other people have been charged with a range of offenses from unlawful confinement to first-degree murder. 3 have pleaded guilty and been sentenced. On this, the 3rd anniversary of her death, Gallagher's family thanked supporters on Facebook in a written statement, saying they draw strength from the support they receive online and in person. In April, a drug emergency was declared on the Blood Tribe Reserve. Not long after, a drug task force was set up, which had a significant impact on the community. CTV's Quinn Keenan has more.
For 6 months, the Blood Tribe Police Service operated its drug task force. The goal was simple: identify drug dealers on the reserve and to get the drugs off the streets.
So the task force was put together as a decision made between the Blood Tribe Police Service and Blood Tribe Chief and Council, as there was an opioid crisis here.
From April to August, the task force surveilled suspected drug dealers and executed search warrants on homes across the reserve. 213 grams of fentanyl were seized, as well as smaller amounts of meth, crack, and cocaine, which led to 38 charges. Overdose calls dropped dramatically from roughly 26 a month down to 6.
We've had people say thank you and congratulations, even as much as saying that their family members have stopped using for the lack of drugs on the reserve and they're seeking treatment. So that was a huge bonus for us to hear.
The task force also wanted to make sure drug dealers wouldn't come back. Those charged were evicted from their homes, which were then boarded up. They'll eventually be renovated, but until then, no one is allowed to live in these homes.
So Blood Tribe Housing has been working with us. When we do execute these search warrants, they come in and they will board up the house, sometimes the same day, sometimes within the week, depending on the consideration.
The task force was disbanded in August after its funding ran out and several officers left for jobs with other agencies. Blood Tribe Police hope once they address their staffing shortage, they can get the task force back up and running.
There are hopefully plans in the future for it to be brought back, hopefully with new funding from the federal government. That's something that we can look forward to.
Police are calling on community members to report any suspected drug dealers on the reserve while the task force is waiting to be brought back. Quinn Keenan, CTV News, Standoff.
All right, it's time we put a brief pause on the newscast, but we will be back in just a few moments with more stories, including getting out the vote for Indigenous people in Manitoba.
It's not till 1960 our people were allowed to vote in this province, and we never gave up that right.
Welcome back to APTN National News. A new president of the Métis Nation of Alberta will be elected Tuesday. That's because Audrey Poitras has retired after 27 years as president. APTN's Chris Stewart talked to Poitras about her decades-long role as president.
For close to 3 decades, Audrey Poitras was at the helm of the Métis Nation of Alberta. Her first win was in 1996. She decided to run because she was working for the MNA in the finance department and knew drastic changes needed to be made.
Right at the very beginning, we needed to build or rebuild the credibility of the Métis Nation. We had to work hard to have, as an example, our banking institutes to believe in us again, our government departments that we had agreements with, some of them that we had lost, to start believing in us again, that we were really prepared now to do what the Métis Nation needed done for the people. So those were some real challenges along the way.
She says hard decisions had to be made early on.
It was a struggle because we were challenged with a lot of things, not having enough resources, having too many people on staff that we had to deal with, which was not an easy thing to do. But we got through it. We got through it, and I believe for the better.
She was the first woman president of any provincial Métis organization in Canada.
I believe one of the biggest challenges was people still believing it was a man's world. It was totally a man's world. And of course, as the president of the Métis Nation, I also sat at the national table with a bunch of men who made it very clear to me every time we went to a meeting that I probably didn't really belong there. But stubborn as I am, that was where I was supposed to be.
President Poitras says she is proud of Métis Crossing, a popular destination that teaches Métis history with a hands-on approach.
So today, of course, we have a beautiful gathering center. We have a 40-room lodge. We have a wildlife park. We have a large solar project that's being developed out there, soon to be open. And we have an outside stage. We are now having weddings, reunions, all of those kinds of things happening there. And our people are coming every weekend of the summer to come and camp. Our youth are out there in the winter for youth camps. So to me, I am so proud of that site.
There have been disappointments. In 2020, 7 northern Métis communities broke away from the MNA and formed the Alberta Métis Federation.
Yes, that's true. 7 Métis communities sent out notices to say they were leaving the Métis Nation. Definitely triggered from one of those presidents who was very, very vocal, that ran in the election, got defeated, made those decisions, and communities followed him. And I probably shouldn't even say communities. Leaders followed him, because today there is very few of those people that have resigned from the Métis Nation, brought back. A few of them have returned their cards, but not all the community, that's for sure. The communities are still active, are still accessing our services, maybe not through the local as it was at that time, but as individuals that we still continue to support.
Joseph Pimlott and Andrea Sandmeyer are running for president. Poitras has endorsed Sandmeyer.
And she's done an amazing job. I believe she's one who is always reaching out for more, has a very good understanding of a lot of things, has sat on major boards. She has a great background with financial background, as well as sitting on some of those boards that are so important, that deal with mental health, that deal with addictions, that deal with all of those that are very, very important to our community.
Audrey says she will spend time at home and do some traveling with family now that she has the time, and write a book. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Manitoba's provincial election is set for October the 3rd, and a Rock the Vote campaign is underway to encourage Indigenous people to exercise their rights and vote. A rally was held on the grounds of the Manitoba Legislature recently. Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kathy Merrick says it's important that First Nations people are part of the discussion, as essential things like health care on reserves falls under the provincial government.
It's not till 1960 our people were allowed to vote in this province. And we never gave up that right. And that's why we're really promoting for our people to come out and vote and exercise that right.
5 First Nations in Ontario are part of a bid that would see them co-own a power transmission line in northeastern Ontario. The proposed 260-kilometer power line would see the Waban Tribal Council nations partner with Hydro One. Jason Métis is Executive Director of the Waban Tribal Council. He joined me late last week from Timmins, Ontario. Jason, thank you so much for joining us here today. First off, can you tell our viewers where exactly in Ontario this power line will run and how much electricity as well that it's going to produce?
The line itself is running from Wawa, Ontario through to Porcupine, Ontario, which is very near to Timmins. It's about it's almost 300 kilometers of new transmission line. And my understanding, it will be a 250 kilovolt transmission line.
So then why is this new power line necessary?
Well, here in northeastern Ontario, we've got a lot of industrial development with the mining industry and the desire for, I guess, Ontarians to rely more on electricity power rather than, fossil fuels. So it's just, a necessary part of the transmission grid here in Ontario to improve and upgrade the system.
And so it's our understanding, Jason, that the First Nations could potentially end up with full ownership of the power line. Is this the end goal here?
Well, the end goal for sure is ownership and actually a starting goal. So the partnership that we've entered into with Hydro One Networks Inc., requires that 50% equity be provided to the nations through a loan mechanism from the company. So for sure, the end result will be some ownership and permanent ownership by First Nation communities.
Now, the Tribal Council has said the project presents an opportunity for reconciliation with the Ontario government. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Well, like other nations across the country, we're just getting now involved in major industrial projects, and the line crosses the traditional territories of some 8 First Nations in the region. And we represent 5 of those. And it's, high time that economic reconciliation occur with our communities. And especially when you're talking about hydro transmission lines, we do have a lot of agreements with non-renewable agencies like mining companies. Timmins is a very well-known mining hub. But those are non-renewable investments that we're making. This will provide ongoing and sustainable revenue streams for the First Nation communities, which we're really excited about.
So then ultimately, when will the partners likely find out if their proposal is approved?
And we're hoping to get an answer within 3 to 6 months. There's been no hard deadlines set by Ontario, but the Ontario regulators are looking to make that decision. My understanding is within 3 to 6 months.
Okay, perfect. We'll have to leave it there, Jason, but thank you so much for giving us a little update on all of this here.
You're very welcome. And if you want a further update, just let me know.
All right, one final break is upon us, so we will step aside. There is more still to come, including a Thunder Bay artist capturing attention.
We've done about 300 commissions throughout North America.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Clarence Jones shared this photo showing smiling faces of all ages at the 2023 Terry Fox Run on the Gitxsan Nation in British Columbia. It's a great photo there, Clarence. Thanks so much for that. And we want to see your photos. Email us at share@aptn.ca and you could be our next photo of the day. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, of 15 in St. John's and 22 in Halifax. 11 degrees in Cartwright and 12 in Kuujjuaq. 17 in Quebec City, and Montreal is looking at 18 degrees. 21 in Toronto and 18 in North Bay. Clear 19 over in Wawa and 22 up in Big Trout Lake. In Churchill, 20 degrees and 21 in Norway House. Clear 24 in Barons River and 28 degrees in Winnipeg. 18 in Regina and 18 in Saskatoon. Mix of sun and cloud and 17 in Buffalo Narrows and 17 in Stony Rapids. Continuing west, 18 and smoky in Fort Chippewa and 17 with some smoke in Peace River. 15 in Edmonton and 13 in Calgary. 17 degrees in Vancouver and 13 in Bella Coola. 11 degrees in Smithers and 16 in Fort Nelson. Mix of sun and cloud and 11 in Whitehorse and clear and 5 up in Rock River. 16 in Wrigley and 11 in Norman Wells. 10 degrees in Fort McPherson and 10 degrees as well in Colville Lake. 8 degrees in Cambridge Bay and 11 in Baker Lake. 4 degrees in Arctic Bay and -1 in Clyde River. An Anishinaabe artist in Thunder Bay, Ontario is pursuing his childhood passion of drawing, and his portraits have gone far beyond those early years. Gene Bushkagan is from the Seine River First Nation in northwestern Ontario, but he grew up in Minnesota. A highlight of Bushkagan's career was having his portrait of the late Princess Diana published in a widely distributed British publication in 2007. Bushkagan is hoping to get more commissions and make art his full-time job.
We've done about 300 commissions throughout North America. Past 4 years, I just been, killing it. And I've mailed stuff from California to Nova Scotia, from British Columbia to Florida, and Canada Post hasn't let me down once. I just want to say that.
That's some beautiful artwork there by Gene. It's always amazing seeing some of the work from these Indigenous artists. And that is all we have for you this evening. If you missed anything or are looking for more news stories, our website, aptnnews.ca, has you covered. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Miigwech, Kinanaskmatan, and have a wonderful evening.